My name is Juliet, and I'm 27 years old. I never imagined being the only one uninvited to my own sister's $750,000 wedding. Everyone in my family was invited, except me. When Mom told me I'd turn her dream day into a nightmare, I just smiled and said softly, "Fair enough." A week later, my Paris wedding photo went completely viral. Suddenly, the same people who once pretended I didn't exist couldn't stop whispering my name. I still remember sitting in my parents' living room in Charleston, South Carolina. The floral couch beneath me felt stiffer than ever, and Mom sat across from me with her perfectly manicured hands folded neatly on her lap. Afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across her face, but there was nothing soft about her words. "You understand why you can't come, don't you?" she said, her voice calm, almost casual, as if she were discussing the weather. "Vivian's dream wedding isn't about you, Juliet. It's about her perfect day, and frankly, your presence would just be complicated." I sat there quietly, staring at her, trying to absorb every word. Maybe she was right, maybe I didn't belong there. I work as a freelance photographer, capturing the beauty of cities, their architecture, their rhythm. I don't make much, just enough to pay rent for my small studio apartment and keep my camera running. But photography gives me something no amount of money ever could: freedom. And as my Paris photo spread like wildfire online, I realized something: I didn't need an invitation to be seen. For years, I had convinced myself that being the overlooked daughter was just the way things were in my family. My younger sister, Vivian, 3 years my junior, had always been the golden child. She was prettier, more charming, and more successful in my parents' eyes. She landed a high-paying job at a marketing firm right out of college, married a wealthy investment banker named Gregory, and now lives in a pristine townhouse that my mother loves to brag about. But this was different. This wasn't merely being forgotten at Christmas or having my birthday overshadowed by Vivian's latest achievement. This was a deliberate exclusion from what my mother kept calling the event of the decade. "Complicated how?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my hands trembled slightly. My mother sighed, as if explaining this to me was exhausting. "Vivian has invited 300 guests. Everyone who matters will be there. The venue alone costs $75,000. She's wearing a custom Vera Wang. There will be photographers from 2 bridal magazines. This isn't some backyard barbecue, Juliet. This is a statement, and you would ruin that statement. You know how you are," she said. And that phrase hit me harder than anything else. "You never quite fit. You're always in your jeans and that old camera bag. Vivian's friends are all polished, put-together people. You'd feel uncomfortable anyway." I wanted to argue. I wanted to point out that I own nice dresses, that I could look presentable when needed, that being a photographer didn't make me some kind of social pariah. But the truth was, this wasn't really about my wardrobe. This was about hierarchy. This was about keeping me in my place. "Does Vivian know you're telling me this?" I asked. My mother's expression flickered for just a second. "We discussed it as a family. Your father agrees it's for the best. And honestly, Juliet, you should be relieved. $750,000 for a wedding, that's the kind of pressure you wouldn't want to be around anyway." $750,000. The number was obscene. That was more than I had earned in the past 5 years combined, and they were spending it on a single day. A single event that I wasn't allowed to witness because I might somehow tarnish it with my presence. I stood up slowly, grabbing my camera bag from beside the couch. My mother watched me with that same calm expression, as if she had just delivered perfectly reasonable news. "I understand," I said quietly. She looked almost relieved. "I knew you would. You've always been so sensible about these things." Sensible. That was her word for compliant, for accepting whatever scraps of affection the family tossed my way. I walked toward the door, my boots making soft sounds on the hardwood floor. Just before I reached it, I turned back. "When is it?" "The wedding." "June 15th. "But Juliet, I really think it's better if—" "I just wanted to know for my calendar," I interrupted. I left before she could say anything else. As I drove away from their pristine colonial house, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was clarity. A cold, sharp clarity about exactly where I stood in this family and what I was worth to them. June 15th was 3 months away. 3 months that they would spend preparing for Vivian's perfect day while I was expected to simply disappear, to make myself conveniently absent so nobody would have to explain why the older sister wasn't there. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and sat in my car for a long time, staring at my phone. Then I opened my banking app and looked at my savings account, $4,300. Not much. But it was mine, money I had earned through my own work and skill. An idea was forming, something reckless and bold and completely unlike the sensible, compliant Juliet my mother expected me to be. If they didn't want me at Vivian's perfect wedding, fine. But that didn't mean I had to spend that day alone in my apartment, scrolling through social media photos of an event I was banned from attending. I opened my laptop and started researching. The idea grew over the next few weeks, consuming my thoughts during quiet moments between photography jobs. I had always wanted to visit Paris. It was the kind of dream I had tucked away in the back of my mind, something that seemed perpetually out of reach for someone living paycheck to paycheck. But as I looked at my savings and did the math, I realized it was possible. Barely, but possible. Growing up, Vivian and I had been close for a brief window of time. When we were children, maybe 4 or 5 years of blissful normalcy before the favoritism became too obvious to ignore. I remembered building blanket forts together and sharing secrets under the covers past bedtime. But somewhere around middle school, things shifted. Vivian discovered she had power in our family dynamic. That our parents would choose her version of events over mine. That she could get what she wanted by playing the victim. The first major incident happened when I was 15 and she was 12. I had saved money from babysitting to buy a professional camera. Something I had wanted desperately. When it arrived, Vivian threw a tantrum about how I got something expensive while she got nothing. Within a week, my parents bought her a laptop that cost twice what my camera did. The pattern was set. In college, while I worked part-time jobs to cover expenses that my minimal scholarship didn't, Vivian got a brand new car for her 18th birthday. My parents said they had contributed to my education and that should be enough. Never mind that their contribution barely covered textbooks. After graduation, when I was struggling to establish my photography business, Vivian landed her marketing job and immediately started making more money than I could dream of. My parents' pride was palpable. Finally, their beautiful youngest daughter was proving her worth. Meanwhile, I was invisible unless I was needed to photograph family events for free or to watch their house when they traveled. I should have been angry, and I was, beneath everything else. But mostly, I was tired. Tired of hoping that someday they might see me as equally valuable. Tired of making myself smaller so Vivian could shine brighter. 2 weeks after my mother's living room announcement, I received the official wedding invitation in the mail. It was addressed to my parents and included a note listing who from the family was invited, every single person, my parents, both sets of grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone except me. The omission was deliberate and documented. I stared at that heavy cardstock invitation with its gold embossing and elegant calligraphy, and something crystallized inside me. This wasn't an oversight. This was a statement about my worth in this family. That evening, I called my best friend, Kara. We had met 5 years ago at a photography workshop and had stayed close despite living in different cities. She was one of the few people who understood my family dynamics without judgment. They didn't invite you? Kara's voice rose in disbelief. To your own sister's wedding? Apparently, I'm a distraction from her perfect day. That's insane. What are you going to do? I took a breath. I'm thinking about going to Paris during her wedding weekend. Silence on the other end. Then, tell me more. I've been researching. There's a photographer in Paris who does high-end bridal style shoots for travelers. A custom gown, professional hair and makeup. A sunrise shoot at the Eiffel Tower. It's expensive, but I can afford it if I'm careful. You want to have your own wedding shoot without a wedding? Why not? If they're going to exclude me from family events, I might as well create my own moments. And I'm a photographer. I know the power of a good image. Kara laughed. I love this. I absolutely love this. When do we leave? You didn't think I was letting you do this alone, did you? I have vacation days saved up. Let me look at flights. That conversation changed everything. Suddenly, it wasn't just a fantasy or a way to avoid painful reminders of my exclusion. It was a real plan with a real friend who believed in me. I spent the next month working extra photography jobs. Accepting every assignment I could find, corporate headshots, real estate photos, family portraits. My savings account slowly grew. I researched Paris neighborhoods, looked at hotel options, and found a photographer named Isabel who specialized in the exact kind of shoot I envisioned. When I contacted Isabel, explaining what I wanted, she responded enthusiastically. She had a dress designer friend who could create a custom gown to my measurements, knew the perfect locations, and understood the vision. The dress alone would cost $1,500. The photography package was another $2,000. Flights and hotel for Kara and me would be roughly $3,000 combined. Hair and makeup, another $300. It all added up to more money than I had ever spent on myself at once, but every time I hesitated, I thought about that invitation with my name conspicuously absent. I thought about my mother's casual dismissal. Her certainty that I would simply accept being erased from this family milestone. 3 weeks before Vivian's wedding, I booked everything: flights, hotel, photography session, dress measurements sent to the designer. It was happening. I didn't tell my family. They didn't ask what I would be doing that weekend anyway. I'm sure they assumed I would spend it quietly at home, maybe seeing a movie or working on my portfolio, definitely not making any waves. But I told Kara everything as we planned. She was almost more excited than I was, researching Parisian cafes and planning what we would do beyond the photo shoot. This trip became something bigger than just a response to being excluded. It became an act of reclaiming my own narrative. My phone buzzed one evening in late May. It was a text from Vivian, the first direct communication I had received from her since the wedding planning began. Mom said you understood about the wedding. I appreciate you being mature about it. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal. As if excluding your only sibling from the biggest day of your life was just a practical decision, like choosing salmon over chicken for the main course. I stared at that message for a long time before responding, I hope you have a beautiful day. I meant it, in a way. I hoped she got everything she wanted from her extravagant celebration, because I was about to get something, too. The week before the trip, my nerves kicked in hard. I second-guessed everything. Was I being petty? Was this just expensive revenge that would leave me broke and feeling hollow? What if nobody even cared about my Paris photos? But then my mother called, and those doubts evaporated. Vivian is so stressed, she said, launching into the conversation without preamble. The final alterations on her dress aren't quite right. And the florist had to substitute 2 types of roses. Can you imagine? After all the planning, these little disasters. That sounds frustrating, I said carefully. She's handling it well, though. She's such a professional. Gregory's mother is hosting a luncheon tomorrow for the wedding party and immediate family. It should be lovely. Immediate family, a category I apparently no longer belong to. I'm sure it will be nice, I said. Are you working that weekend? The wedding weekend? My mother asked. And there was something in her tone that made me think she actually hoped I would be busy. That I would have some concrete excuse for my absence that would make the whole situation feel less cruel. I have plans, I said. Oh, good. I'm glad you'll have something to occupy yourself with. After we hung up, I pulled out my suitcase and started packing. Kara was flying in 2 days before we left for Paris, staying with me so we could travel together. The dress designer had sent confirmation photos of the completed gown, and it was breathtaking, a flowing ivory creation with delicate beading on the bodice and a skirt that would move beautifully in photographs. It was everything I had envisioned and more. When Kara arrived, we spent the evening going over every detail of the trip. She had even brought props, a delicate veil she had found at a vintage shop and a bouquet preservation kit so we could dry the flowers afterward if I wanted. This is going to be incredible, she said, scrolling through Isabel's portfolio on her tablet. Look at these shots. You're going to look like you stepped out of a magazine. I looked at the images of stunning women in beautiful gowns at iconic Paris locations. In 2 days, that would be me. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Do you think I'm being vindictive? I asked. Kara set down the tablet and looked at me. Seriously? I think you're being human. They excluded you from a major family event and expected you to just disappear quietly. You're not crashing the wedding or trying to ruin anything. You're simply living your life in a way that brings you joy. That's not vindictive. That's survival. We flew out on a Thursday evening, landing in Paris early Friday morning, local time. Despite being exhausted from the overnight flight, I felt electric with anticipation. The city was everything I had imagined, elegant, historic, and alive with possibility. Our hotel was a small boutique place in the 7th arrondissement, within walking distance of the Eiffel Tower. After checking in and napping for a few hours, we met with Isabel at her studio. She was warm and enthusiastic, her English excellent despite a charming French accent. The dress arrived yesterday, she said, leading us to a back room where it hung on a mannequin. I think you will be very pleased. It was more beautiful in person than in photos. The ivory fabric caught the light perfectly, and the beading was delicate without being overwhelming. I had told the designer I wanted something that looked bridal but not costume-like, something that could be worn to a fancy event if I wanted. She had nailed it. We begin at 5:30 tomorrow morning, Isabel explained. The light at sunrise is perfect, and there will be fewer tourists. Hair and makeup starts at 4. I know it's early, but trust me, the results will be worth it. That evening, Kara and I walked around Paris, grabbing dinner at a small cafe and wandering along the Seine as the sun set. I tried not to think about what was happening back home. By now, wedding guests were arriving in Charleston. Vivian was probably having a spa day or attending some pre-wedding event. My parents were in their element, hosting and being proud, and I was here in Paris, about to create something entirely my own. We went to bed early, setting multiple alarms. At 3:30 in the morning, we stumbled out of bed and got ready. The hair and makeup artist met us at the hotel, transforming my usually casual appearance into something ethereal. She wove small flowers into my upswept hair and gave me a natural but polished makeup look. By 5 a.m., dressed in the ivory gown, I felt like a different person. Kara kept taking photos with her phone, grinning the entire time. You look like a princess, she said. Vivian's going to die when she sees these. If she sees them, I corrected. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with the photos yet. That was partly true. I had ideas, but nothing felt concrete. Part of me wanted to post the images publicly as a visible reminder that I existed and could create beauty without their permission. But another part wanted to keep them private, a secret rebellion that only I would fully understand. Isabel picked us up in her car, and we drove to the Trocadero Gardens. The sky was just beginning to lighten, a soft pink glow on the horizon. The Eiffel Tower stood before us, dramatic and iconic. Perfect, Isabel murmured, already assessing angles and light. For the next 2 hours, we moved through the gardens and surrounding areas. Isabel directed me with professional expertise, having me turn, lift the dress, look toward the tower, and walk along the paths. Kara assisted with the veil and dress train, making sure everything flowed perfectly. It was magic. There was no other word for it. As the sun rose and golden light spread across the scene, I forgot about being excluded from Vivian's wedding. I forgot about being the overlooked daughter. In that moment, I was simply Juliet, standing in one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Captured exactly as I wished to be. When Isabel finally lowered her camera, she was smiling. We have something very special. I can feel it. We changed locations for a few more shots, capturing images near the Seine and at a picturesque bridge. By 8 o'clock in the morning, we were finished. I was exhausted but exhilarated. Back at the hotel, I changed out of the dress carefully, hanging it where I could see it. Kara and I collapsed onto our respective beds. That was unreal, Kara said. Seriously, Juliet, you just created art. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, not happiness exactly, but validation. Proof that I could create my own beautiful moments without needing my family's approval or inclusion. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother, wedding day. Everything looks perfect. I didn't respond. Instead, I closed my eyes and let myself drift into sleep, satisfied in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Tomorrow, I would see the photos. Tomorrow, I would decide what to do with them. Tomorrow, everything might change. But for now, I rested, knowing I had done something brave and beautiful and entirely for myself. We spent the rest of Saturday exploring Paris, but my mind kept drifting back to Charleston. By now, Vivian's ceremony had started. I imagined the venue, probably some historic mansion or upscale hotel ballroom decorated within an inch of its life, 300 guests in formal attire. My parents greeting everyone with proud smiles, playing the role of perfect in-laws to Gregory's wealthy family. And nobody would mention me. Nobody would ask where the older daughter was. If they did, my parents probably had a prepared answer. Oh, Juliet couldn't make it. She had work commitments. Something vague and dismissive that would shut down further questions. Kara noticed my distraction as we sat at a cafe in the Latin Quarter that evening. You're thinking about it. Hard not to, I admitted. I keep wondering if anyone even noticed I'm not there. Their loss, Kara said firmly. And honestly, after what we did this morning, after those photos we're going to see tomorrow, you won. You already won. I wanted to believe her. But there was a hollow feeling in my chest that wouldn't quite go away. It wasn't jealousy of Vivian's wedding exactly. It was grief for the family relationship I had always wanted but never had. Grief for being the daughter who wasn't worth including. Sunday morning, we met Isabel at her studio to review the photos. She had a large monitor set up, and as she pulled up the first image, I gasped. It was me, but somehow more than me. The morning light created an almost otherworldly glow. The Eiffel Tower rose behind me, perfectly framed. The dress flowed around me like water frozen in time. My expression was serene, confident, beautiful in a way I had never seen myself before. Keep going, Kara breathed, leaning forward. Isabel clicked through image after image. Each one was stunning. Some were dramatic, with dark silhouettes against the lightning sky. Others were soft and romantic, with the veil catching the breeze. There were close-ups that showed the intricate dress details and wide shots that captured the grand scope of the location. These are professional quality, I said, my voice catching. These could be in magazines. Isabel smiled. They should be. You're a natural in front of the camera, Juliet. Many people freeze or look artificial, but you understood the assignment. You embodied the vision. We selected the best images for final editing. Isabel promised to have them ready by Tuesday, our last full day in Paris before we flew home Wednesday morning. As we left the studio, Kara grabbed my arm. You need to post these. I know you're hesitant, but these are too good to keep private. I don't know, I said. What if it seems like I'm trying to upstage Vivian? What if it does? Kara challenged. She excluded you from her wedding. She doesn't get to control how you spend your time or what you share about your own life. These photos aren't about her. They're about you. We spent Sunday and Monday being tourists, visiting museums and eating incredible food. But my mind kept returning to those images. Kara was right. They were too beautiful to hide. And more than that, I had worked hard for them. I had saved the money, planned extensively, and taken a risk. Why should I diminish my own achievement because it might overshadow my sister? By Monday evening, I had made a decision. When Isabel sent the final edited images Tuesday morning, I would post one. Not to hurt Vivian, but simply to share something I was proud of. If my family had a problem with that, well, they should have thought about that before excluding me. Tuesday afternoon, the edited photos arrived in my inbox. They were even more stunning with Isabel's professional touch. The colors were rich, the lighting perfect, every detail polished. I spent an hour choosing which one to post. Finally, I settled on an image taken right as the sun broke the horizon. I stood in profile, looking toward the Eiffel Tower, the dress catching the golden light. The composition was perfect, the mood both romantic and powerful. Now came the caption. I typed and deleted several versions, trying to find the right tone, not bitter, not angry, but confident. Finally, I settled on something simple. No invite needed to shine brighter. I stared at those words for a long time. They were pointed enough that my family would understand the reference, but vague enough that most people wouldn't. It was my truth. Delivered with grace rather than rage. I posted it to Instagram at 7 o'clock in the evening. Paris time, which was 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Charleston. Vivian's wedding had been Saturday, so by now she would be on her honeymoon, or at least in the immediate post-wedding glow, probably posting her own professional photos. I closed the app immediately after posting, too nervous to watch the reactions roll in. Kara and I went to dinner, trying to distract ourselves with wine and conversation. But by the time we got back to the hotel 2 hours later, my phone was exploding with notifications. The post had already garnered over 2,000 likes, far more than anything I had ever posted before, and the comments were pouring in. This is absolutely stunning. Where is this dress from? I need it. Paris goals. You look like a fairy tale princess. I scrolled through dozens of similar comments, my heart racing. Then I saw messages from people I actually knew, distant cousins, old school friends, even a few professional contacts. All expressed amazement at the photo, but there was nothing from my immediate family. Not my parents, not Vivian. Radio silence from the people who should have cared most. It's going viral, Kara said, looking at her own phone. Look, someone already shared it to a wedding inspiration page. They're calling it a solo bridal photo shoot and asking if this is a new trend. I checked the share count, already over 300 and climbing within the wedding photography community I followed online. People were talking about it. Someone had tagged several bridal magazines in the comments, suggesting they feature the shoot. This is insane, I whispered. This is actually going viral. Kara was grinning. You created something people respond to. This is what happens when genuine emotion meets professional quality. People can feel the authenticity. We stayed up late watching the numbers climb. By midnight Paris time, the post had 5,000 likes and had been shared over 1,000 times. A major wedding blog had reached out asking to feature it. 2 photographers wanted to know who had shot it so they could credit Isabel. A dress designer asked about the gown. And still, nothing from my family. I went to bed that night with my phone buzzing constantly with new notifications. It should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt strangely empty. I had wanted validation, proof that I mattered, and I was getting it from thousands of strangers. But the people whose recognition I craved most remained silent. Wednesday morning, we packed for our flight home. My post was still gaining traction. Overnight, it had been picked up by a major lifestyle website with millions of followers. They had written a short article about the solo wedding shoot trend taking social media by storm. Featuring my photo prominently, the numbers were staggering now, over 15,000 likes, nearly 5,000 shares, and comments in multiple languages. People were asking where to book similar shoots, tagging friends, and sharing their own stories of being excluded from family events. I had unintentionally tapped into something bigger than my personal grievance. It resonated with people who had felt overlooked, dismissed, or excluded. My photo wasn't just pretty. It represented reclaiming your own narrative when others tried to write you out of the story. On the flight home, exhaustion caught up with me. I slept most of the way, my phone on airplane mode to avoid the constant notifications. Kara kept checking her phone during layovers, giving me updates. A bridal magazine wants to interview you, she reported at our connection in New York. And someone from a morning show reached out. They want to do a segment on solo celebration shoots. That's crazy, I said. I'm not qualified to speak about trends. I just wanted nice photos. You started something, Kara insisted. Whether you meant to or not. We landed in Charleston late Wednesday evening. I had several missed calls from my mother and a string of texts from Vivian. I didn't read them on the ride home, too tired to deal with whatever storm was brewing. Thursday morning, I woke up in my own bed to my phone ringing. My mother. I considered ignoring it, but after the fourth call, I answered. Juliet, what on earth were you thinking? Her voice was sharp with anger. Good morning to you, too, I said, sitting up. Don't be flippant. You posted that ridiculous photo during Vivian's wedding. Do you have any idea how inappropriate that was? I posted it on Monday, I corrected. 2 days after the wedding. It doesn't matter when you posted it. It's everywhere now. People keep sending it to Vivian, asking if you're her sister, asking why you weren't at the wedding. You've completely overshadowed her special day. I felt a surge of anger. Her special day that I wasn't invited to. We explained the situation. This was Vivian's time to shine, and you couldn't even give her that. You had to make it about yourself. I went to Paris, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I took photos that I'm proud of. I posted one picture to my personal Instagram account. How is any of that about Vivian? Because of the timing was the only weekend I could afford the trip, I interrupted. Or did you expect me to schedule my entire life around an event I wasn't allowed to attend? Silence on the other end. Then, tightly, Vivian is very upset. Vivian excluded me from her wedding without a conversation or explanation. I'm sorry if my life existing publicly upset her, but that's not my problem. This is exactly why we didn't invite you, my mother snapped. This kind of attitude, this need for attention. You've always been jealous of your sister. I've never been jealous, I said, and I meant it. I've been hurt. I've been dismissed. I've been treated as less important my entire life, but I'm not jealous, and I'm done apologizing for existing. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. In all my years of accepting their treatment, I had never directly confronted my mother like that. It felt simultaneously empowering and terrifying. Within an hour, Vivian called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. You sabotaged my wedding, she said immediately, her voice thick with tears or rage or both. I wasn't even in the same country as your wedding, I replied. You know what I mean. Everyone is talking about your stupid Paris photos instead of my wedding. I spent 3 months planning every detail, and you ruined it with one attention-seeking post. Vivian, I didn't do anything to you. I took photos in Paris. That's it. You planned it specifically to take attention away from me during my wedding weekend. Actually, I planned it because it was the only weekend I wasn't expected to participate in the events, I said. Since I wasn't invited to yours. Mom explained why. No, I cut her off. Mom made excuses. There's a difference. You wanted me excluded, and you got what you wanted. But you don't get to control what I do with my own life and my own social media. I barely got any engagement on my wedding photos, Vivian said, and now she was definitely crying. 200 likes. My wedding photographer's post got even less, but your stupid fake wedding shoot has gone viral. Do you know how that feels? Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but a larger part felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I imagine it feels like being told you're not good enough to attend your sister's wedding, I said quietly. Like being erased from family photos and events. Like being the eternal disappointment who never quite measures up. So yes, Vivian, I know exactly how that feels. She hung up on me. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, feeling both vindicated and hollowed out. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? For them to see me, to acknowledge my existence, to feel some consequence for how they treated me. But it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. My phone buzzed with a text from Kara. Are you okay? Saw your Instagram comments. Your family found out. I replied, yeah, they're mad, but I'm okay. Good. You did nothing wrong. Remember that. I spent the rest of the day catching up on work emails and trying to ignore the continued explosion of my Instagram post. It had passed 20,000 likes now. Multiple blogs had featured it. 2 more magazines had reached out. A wedding planning company wanted to sponsor similar shoots, asking if I'd be interested in becoming a brand ambassador. It was surreal. I had gone to Paris to create one beautiful moment for myself, and somehow I had accidentally launched a social media movement. People were posting their own solo celebration photos using hashtags like #ShineWithoutPermission and #MyOwnNarrative. Friday afternoon, an unknown number called. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Juliet? This is Melissa from Bridal Dreams magazine. We'd love to feature your photo shoot in our next issue and do a full interview about the experience. Bridal Dreams magazine, one of the biggest bridal publications in the country. The same magazine that had allegedly sent photographers to cover Vivian's wedding. I'm interested, I heard myself say. What would that involve? As Melissa explained the opportunity, I realized this was bigger than I had imagined. They wanted a 4-page spread, professional treatment, my story told in my own words. They were calling it, a new kind of celebration when you're your own guest of honor. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Then I started laughing, not cruel laughter, but the kind born from disbelief and irony. Vivian had spent $750,000 to get magazine coverage for her wedding. And I had accidentally gotten it with one Instagram post and a $5,000 trip to Paris. The magazine interview was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, my Instagram post continued its trajectory. It hit 40,000 likes, then 60,000. Brands started reaching out, offering sponsorships and collaborations. A travel company wanted to create a solo celebration package based on my experience. A dress designer wanted to collaborate on a line of non-wedding formal wear for women celebrating themselves. I was overwhelmed. I was a freelance photographer who could barely afford rent, and suddenly I had opportunities that could change my financial situation entirely. But more than the money or attention, I felt seen. Thousands of people understood what I had done and why it mattered. My family, however, was spiraling. Saturday morning, my father called. Unlike my mother, he wasn't yelling. He sounded tired. "Juliet, can we talk in person?" I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my apartment that afternoon. When I arrived, he was already there, looking older than I remembered. The stress of the past week showed on his face. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "What did you want to talk about?" He sighed, stirring his coffee unnecessarily. "Your mother and sister are very upset." "I know. They've made that clear. They feel you deliberately tried to ruin Vivian's wedding." "And what do you think?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "I think we didn't handle the wedding situation well. Your mother was worried about family dynamics, about keeping things smooth for Vivian's day. But maybe we went too far." "Maybe?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "We should have included you," he said quietly. "That's what I wanted to say. We should have found a way to make everyone feel welcome. But you didn't." "No, we didn't." He looked at me directly for the first time. "And I'm sorry for that. I should have stood up for you, and I didn't." It was the first apology I had received from anyone in my family. It should have felt more satisfying than it did. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But Dad, this isn't just about the wedding. This is about years of being treated like I don't matter as much as Vivian. The wedding was just the final, most obvious example." "I know," he said, and he looked genuinely pained. "Your mother and we saw Vivian's confidence and success, and we wanted to encourage that, but we didn't realize how much we were neglecting you in the process." "You realized," I corrected. "You just didn't think it mattered enough to change." He didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out his phone and showed me something. It was Vivian's Instagram account. Her wedding photos had comments disabled, and where there should have been hundreds of likes, there were barely a handful. "She's devastated," he said. "All that planning, all that money, and nobody seems to care. Meanwhile, your Paris photos are everywhere. She feels like you stole her moment." "I didn't steal anything," I said firmly. "I created my own moment. The fact that people responded to it more than they did to her wedding isn't my fault." "I know that. Logically, I know that." He put his phone away. "But she's my daughter, too, and she's hurting." "So am I," I said. "I've been hurting for years, and none of you noticed or cared. Now suddenly, it matters because Vivian's feelings are hurt. That's not fair, is it?" I stood up. "Dad, I'm glad you apologized about the wedding. But one apology doesn't undo decades of dismissal. And I'm not going to apologize for living my life and posting about it just because it makes Vivian feel bad." I left before he could respond, walking back to my apartment. I felt the weight of everything settling on my shoulders. This wasn't the simple revenge fantasy I might have imagined. It was complicated and messy and painful for everyone involved. But I also felt something else: freedom. For the first time, I wasn't trying to make myself smaller to accommodate my family's comfort. I wasn't apologizing for taking up space. Monday morning, I did the interview with Bridal Dreams magazine. The journalist, Melissa, was insightful and kind, asking questions that went beyond the surface story. "What made you decide to do this shoot?" she asked. "I wanted to create something beautiful for myself," I said. "I spent so much time waiting for permission to be celebrated, waiting to be seen as valuable. This was me giving myself that permission. And the timing, during your sister's wedding weekend." "That was the weekend I had available," I said honestly. "And symbolically, it felt right. She was having her perfect day with everyone's attention and approval. I was creating my own perfect day without needing anyone's permission." The article came out 3 weeks later. They had done a stunning layout with several of Isabel's photos, and the interview was thoughtful and well written. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My Instagram followers jumped from 2,000 to over 100,000 in 1 week. But the real impact was in my inbox. Letters and messages from women shared their own stories of feeling overlooked, excluded, or dismissed by family. Many had gone on to create their own moments of celebration inspired by my photo shoot. I read every message, often with tears in my eyes, realizing that my personal act of defiance had become something much larger. A week after the magazine came out, Vivian showed up at my apartment unannounced. I almost didn't let her in, but curiosity won again. She looked different, smaller somehow, less sure of herself. The confidence that had always defined her seemed shaken. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside to let her in. We sat in my small living room, an awkward silence stretching between us. "I read the magazine article," she finally said. "The things you said about feeling excluded, about not being celebrated. What about them?" I never thought about it like that. From my perspective, I was just living my life, being successful, getting what I worked for. I didn't realize. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Didn't realize what? That you felt so invisible? That we made you feel that way?" I waited, saying nothing. "I'm not apologizing for my wedding," Vivian continued, some of her old defensiveness returning, "or for my life. But I am sorry that you felt so excluded for so long that you had to go to Paris alone to feel celebrated." It wasn't a perfect apology. It was wrapped in defensiveness and qualifications, but it was something. "Thank you," I said simply. "Are we ever going to be okay?" she asked. "As sisters?" I thought about that. "I don't know. Maybe, but it would require you actually seeing me as an equal, not as someone who exists in your shadow." She nodded slowly. "The thing is, your Paris photos proved you were never in my shadow. You just made it look that way by staying quiet." She left shortly after, and I sat in my apartment thinking about her words. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had made myself smaller for years, accepting the role of the overlooked daughter because it seemed easier than fighting. But I wasn't that person anymore. The opportunities kept coming. By the end of the month, I had signed a contract with a luxury travel brand to create content for their solo celebration campaign. The payment was more than I had made in the previous 6 months combined. A boutique hotel chain reached out about an ongoing partnership. 3 different photography workshops wanted me to teach sessions about creating viral content with authentic storytelling. My financial situation transformed overnight. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worried about making rent. I wasn't calculating whether I could afford groceries and camera equipment in the same week. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's exclusion had inadvertently launched my career in a way years of hard work hadn't managed to achieve, but the most satisfying development came from an unexpected source. The photographer who had been hired to shoot Vivian's wedding reached out to me directly. Her name was Catherine, and her message was professional but pointed. "I wanted to introduce myself," she wrote. "I was contracted to photograph your sister's wedding and provide images to Bridal Dreams magazine for their coverage. However, after your photo shoot went viral, the magazine decided to cancel the planned feature of Vivian's wedding. They said the narrative had shifted to solo celebrations, and a traditional 6-figure wedding no longer fit their editorial direction. I thought you should know, as it seems your family has been blaming you for the lack of coverage. The truth is, the magazine made a business decision based on what their readers were responding to. Your photo shoot simply resonated more than a conventional luxury wedding." I read that message 3 times, processing the implications. Vivian hadn't just lost social media engagement. She had lost the magazine feature she had apparently been counting on, the one my parents had probably used to justify the enormous expense. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt something more complex, not quite guilt, but an awareness of the collateral damage my one decision had created. I hadn't meant to cost Vivian her magazine feature. I had simply posted a photo I was proud of. But intentions didn't change outcomes. That evening, my mother called again. This time, her tone was different, not angry, but almost pleading. "Juliet, Vivian is not doing well. This whole situation has really affected her." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't actually want my sister to suffer. The wedding was supposed to be her moment. She planned everything perfectly, spent so much money, and now people don't even remember it because of your Paris photos. "Mom, I didn't plan for my photos to go viral. I just posted something I was proud of." "But you had to know," she insisted. "You're a photographer. You understand social media. You had to know posting those images during her wedding would take attention away from her." "I posted them 2 days after the wedding," I reminded her. "And even if I had posted them the same day, I'm allowed to share my own life on my own accounts. Vivian doesn't have ownership over an entire weekend." "But as her sister, I should have been invited to the wedding," I interrupted. "We can't have it both ways. Either I'm enough of a sister to be expected to protect her interests, or I'm not enough of a sister to be included in major family events. You don't get to pick and choose based on what's convenient." Silence. Then, quietly, "When did you become so harsh?" "I'm not harsh. I'm just done being invisible." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my small balcony, watching the Charleston evening unfold. My phone buzzed with notifications from Instagram, brand inquiries, messages from followers. My life had changed dramatically in just a few weeks, but the relationship with my family was irrevocably altered. There would be no going back to the way things were, to me quietly accepting whatever scraps of attention they offered. That version of Juliet was gone. The next morning, I received an email from a literary agent. She had seen the Bridal Dreams article and thought my story would make a compelling book. Not just about the photo shoot, but about the broader experience of being overlooked in your own family and finding the courage to celebrate yourself. There's a hunger for these stories, she wrote. Women reclaiming their narratives, refusing to stay small. I think you could speak to that in a powerful way. A book. I had never considered writing a book, but as I thought about it, I realized how many stories I had, years of being dismissed. Of watching Vivian be celebrated while I was barely acknowledged. The slow realization that I needed to create my own validation. The decision to go to Paris, the aftermath. I agreed to a call with the agent, and by the end of the week, we were discussing a book proposal. The advance she mentioned was more money than I had earned in 2 years of photography work. Everything was happening fast, too fast maybe. But I was riding the wave, making decisions that felt right, even if they scared me. 2 months after my Paris trip, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference in Atlanta. The topic was, creating your own narrative when others try to write you out. I was terrified. Public speaking wasn't something I had ever done, and the idea of standing in front of hundreds of people was paralyzing. But Kara talked me into it. This is what you've been working toward your whole life, she said. Not the fame or the money, but the validation that your voice matters. Don't waste this opportunity. The conference was held in a large hotel ballroom. I stood backstage, my hands shaking as I listened to the speaker before me wrap up. Then it was my turn. I walked onto that stage, looked out at the sea of faces, and told my story. I talked about being the invisible daughter, about the wedding exclusion, about deciding to go to Paris. I showed the photos, talked about the viral response, and discussed the complicated aftermath. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Women came up to me afterward, sharing their own stories of family exclusion, of being overlooked, of finding the courage to celebrate themselves. And yet, several were crying. Many hugged me. You made me feel less alone, one woman said. I thought I was the only one whose family treated them like this. That night in my hotel room, I reflected on how far I had come. 3 months ago, I was the excluded sister, hurt and invisible. Now I was someone whose story resonated with thousands of people. But I still felt the ache of family disconnection. Success didn't erase that pain. It just made it more complicated. The book deal was finalized in September, 4 months after my Paris trip. My agent had negotiated a substantial advance, and the publisher wanted the manuscript completed within a year. I was both thrilled and terrified. Writing about my experiences meant fully confronting everything I had spent years trying to minimize. My parents' reaction to the book news was predictable. My mother called, her voice tight with anxiety. You're writing a book about the family, Juliet. That's incredibly invasive. We have a right to privacy. I'm writing about my experiences, I corrected. My story, my perspective. You don't get to control that. But you'll make us look bad. You'll tell everyone about the wedding situation. I'll tell the truth about my life. If that makes you look bad, maybe you should have treated me better. She hung up without another word. Vivian's response came via text. I can't believe you're doing this. Profiting off family drama. This is a new low. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't escalate into another argument. But the distance from my family, while painful, was also liberating. I was building a life that didn't require their approval. I was creating success on my own terms. In October, 6 months after Paris, I was invited to appear on a national morning show to discuss the solo celebration movement that had emerged from my viral post. The segment was titled, Why Women Are Celebrating Themselves, and I was nervous about how they would frame the story. The interview went better than I expected. The host was warm and genuinely interested in the psychological aspects of family exclusion and self-validation. When she asked about my sister's wedding, I was careful with my words. The exclusion hurt deeply, but it also clarified some things for me. I realized I had been waiting my whole life for my family to see me as valuable, and I finally understood that I didn't need their permission to celebrate myself. And your relationship with your family now? The host asked. Complicated, I admitted. We're in a difficult place, but I'm at peace with that because I'm no longer sacrificing my own well-being to maintain a relationship that was never healthy to begin with. After the show aired, my Instagram followers jumped to over 300,000. More brand deals came in, more speaking invitations. The momentum was dizzying, but the real turning point came in late October when I received an email from Bridal Dreams magazine again. They wanted to do a follow-up piece, 6 months after the original feature. The working title was The Aftermath: How One Photo Changed Everything. The new article would include an update on my career, discussion of the book deal, and reflection on the family dynamics. But here was the twist: they wanted to interview Vivian, too. They wanted both sisters' perspectives on what had happened. My first instinct was to refuse. Giving Vivian a platform to present her version of events felt dangerous. But my agent saw opportunity. "This could actually be powerful," she said. "If you're confident in your truth, let her speak. The contrast will be revealing." I agreed, with conditions. I wanted to see Vivian's interview before publication. I wanted the right to respond to any false claims. The magazine agreed. 2 weeks later, they sent me the transcript of Vivian's interview. I read it with a mixture of anger and sadness. She portrayed herself as the victim of my jealousy, someone whose perfect day had been deliberately sabotaged by a bitter older sister. She claimed I had always been envious of her success, that I had posted the Paris photos specifically to hurt her, that my entire Paris trip was calculated revenge. But what struck me most was how little accountability she took. In her version, she bore no responsibility for the exclusion. That was entirely my parents' decision, and she had simply gone along with it. The lack of empathy in her words was stark. I wrote my response carefully. I didn't attack Vivian directly. Instead, I focused on facts, the timeline of events, the years of being treated as less important, the invitation list that excluded only me, the decision to use that weekend for self-celebration because I wasn't included in family events anyway. "I can't control how my sister interprets my actions," I wrote. "But I can tell my truth. And my truth is that I spent 27 years being invisible in my own family. Going to Paris wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was choosing to celebrate myself when nobody else would." The article came out in mid-November, and it was explosive. The magazine had done an excellent job of presenting both perspectives without explicitly taking sides. But the reader comments made it clear who they believed. Thousands of people pointed out Vivian's lack of self-awareness, her refusal to acknowledge her role in the situation, her continued dismissal of my feelings. The older sister was excluded from a major family event and still found a way to celebrate life, one comment read. The younger sister had a $750,000 wedding and is mad that someone else got attention. Tell me who the real problem is. The article went viral in its own right. It was shared across social media platforms, discussed on podcasts, and analyzed in think pieces about family dynamics and sibling rivalry. And through it all, Vivian remained silent on social media. Her Instagram, once full of carefully curated posts about her perfect life, went quiet. My parents didn't reach out. The silence should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the final severing of already damaged ties. In December, 8 months after Paris, I signed the lease on a new apartment. Not just any apartment, a beautiful 2-bedroom place in a historic Charleston neighborhood with high ceilings and large windows, perfect for a home photography studio. I could afford it comfortably now, thanks to the brand deals and book advance. Cara helped me move in, and we celebrated with champagne on my new balcony overlooking the street. "You did it," she said, raising her glass. "You actually built a whole new life." "We did it," I corrected. "You were there for every step." "So, what's next?" "More travel content, the book, all of that," I said. "But also, I want to help other people tell their stories. Women who feel invisible, who need permission to celebrate themselves. I'm thinking about starting workshops, creating a platform for those voices." Cara smiled. "That's perfect. You found your purpose." Maybe I had, not just in the success or the recognition, but in using my experience to help others feel less alone. The book was published the following June, almost exactly 1 year after my Paris trip. The title was Uninvited: Celebrating Yourself When Others Count You Out. The cover featured one of Isabelle's photos from Paris, me in the ivory dress with the Eiffel Tower behind me. The launch party was held at an art gallery in downtown Charleston. Over 200 people attended, friends, colleagues, followers who had become friends, women whose stories had intersected with mine through the solo celebration movement. Cara gave a toast that made me cry. My agent spoke about the power of authentic storytelling. My family was not there. I had sent invitations out of courtesy, not expectation. They didn't respond. The book was an immediate success. It hit bestseller lists within the first week. Reviews praised its honesty and emotional depth. Women shared it in book clubs, posted quotes from it on social media, and wrote to me about how it had helped them process their own family trauma. But the success came with complications. My parents hired a lawyer, threatening to sue for invasion of privacy. Their lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, claiming I had defamed them. My publisher's legal team reviewed the book thoroughly and concluded that everything I had written was either factually accurate or clearly presented as my personal perspective, protected under free speech. The lawsuit threat went nowhere, but it revealed how far apart we had grown. They were more concerned with their reputation than with understanding the pain that had led me to write the book in the first place. Vivian took a different approach. She wrote an op-ed for a website about being portrayed unfairly in someone else's narrative. She never mentioned me by name, but the subtext was clear. She positioned herself as a victim of my success, someone whose privacy had been violated for profit. The response to her op-ed was swift and largely unsympathetic. People pointed out that she could have reached out to repair the relationship privately but had chosen instead to make public statements. They noted that she still hadn't acknowledged her role in the original Exclusion.by summer. 1 year after Paris, I was traveling frequently for book tours and speaking engagements. I spoke at universities, women's conferences, and corporate events about empowerment and authenticity. Each time I told my story, I saw recognition in the audience's faces. So many people understood what it felt like to be overlooked, to be made small by family dynamics. In August, I received an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Patricia, who identified herself as a family therapist specializing in sibling dynamics and parental favoritism. "I've used your story in several sessions with clients," she wrote. "It's helped them understand that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I'm writing a book about family scapegoating, and I'd love to interview you for a chapter if you're willing." I agreed. The interview was thoughtful and probing, exploring not just what happened, but why these family patterns develop and persist. Patricia explained golden child and scapegoat dynamics, how families often assign roles that become self-fulfilling prophecies. "You broke the pattern," she told me. "Most scapegoated children spend their lives trying to earn approval that will never come. You chose a different path. You validated yourself instead of waiting for them to do it." That conversation helped me understand my story in a larger context. I wasn't just the excluded sister. I was someone who had recognized a toxic pattern and made the hard choice to step away from it. In September, I was invited to speak at a major conference in New York about women's empowerment and social media influence. The audience was over 1,000 people. When I walked onto that stage, I thought about the scared, invisible girl I had been just 16 months earlier, the one who believed she wasn't worth celebrating unless someone else decided she was. I told my story to those 1,000 faces. I showed the Paris photos. I talked about the viral response and everything that followed. And then I said something I had been thinking about for months. Going to Paris wasn't revenge. It was revolution. A personal revolution. The quiet kind that happens when you stop asking for permission to exist fully and start granting it to yourself. My family wanted me to be invisible, and for years, I complied. But in Paris, I made myself visible. I discovered that when you shine your own light, you don't need anyone else's approval to be luminous. The applause was deafening. After the conference, I walked through Central Park, reflecting on everything that had changed. My career was thriving in ways I never imagined possible. I had financial security, professional recognition, and a platform to help others. But I had also lost my family. Or perhaps I had simply acknowledged a loss that had always existed. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw it was from Vivian. "I saw your New York speech online. You were right about some things. I've been thinking a lot this past year. I'm in therapy now, working through my own issues. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to understand." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reconciliation. But it was acknowledgement. Maybe that was enough for now. I replied simply, "I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. When you're ready to talk, I'm here." Whether she would ever take me up on that offer, I didn't know, but I meant it. I had built a life that didn't require her approval or presence. But there was still a part of me that hoped for healing, not a return to the old dynamics. But something new and healthier. Months after the New York conference, the consequences of my family's choices became increasingly clear. My parents' social circle in Charleston had read my book, and many had distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the revelations about how they had treated me. Their reputation in the community suffered as people realized the golden family image had been built on the erasure of one daughter. They retired early and moved to a smaller town where nobody knew their history. Unable to face the judgment in their former neighborhood. Vivian's career had stalled after the wedding incident and subsequent publicity. The marketing firm where she worked quietly let her go during a restructuring, though it was clear her viral notoriety had made her a liability. Gregory filed for divorce 8 months into their marriage, unable to handle the social media fallout and what he called her obsession with appearances over substance. She moved back in with our parents for while a humbling experience for someone who had spent her life being celebrated as the successful one. As for me, I sat on my apartment balcony 2 years after that Paris sunrise, watching Charleston wake up on a peaceful morning. My second book was releasing next month, a guide to solo celebration and self-validation for women reclaiming their narratives. I had launched a successful online community for women navigating family exclusion, providing resources and support that I wished I had when I was younger. Cara and I were planning another trip to Paris. This time just for pleasure rather than necessity. The journey from invisible daughter to woman with her own voice had been painful and messy, more complicated than any revenge fantasy could capture. But sitting there with my coffee, watching the morning light paint the city gold, I realized something important. I hadn't just escaped being overlooked. I had learned to see myself clearly, to celebrate myself genuinely, to shine without needing anyone's permission or approval. And in teaching others to do the same, I had found something more valuable than family acceptance. I had found purpose, community, and, most importantly, I had found myself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't punishment at all. Sometimes it's simply refusing to stay small, building a life so bright that those who tried to dim you can't help but notice. Realizing too late what they lost when they chose not to see you in the first place. This story, now settling in the quiet corners of memory, was never just a narrative. It was an awakening, a raw pulse of human truth wrapped in whispered emotions. Every word a fragment of reality, every sentence a bridge between the light of revelation and the quiet spaces of what remains unspoken. It is in this liminal space that stories breathe their most potent magic, stirring the deepest chambers of the soul, provoking unspoken fears and fragile hopes alike. This is the power of these tales, these digital confessions where anonymity masks truth. And every reader becomes a keeper of secrets too heavy to carry alone. That trembling echo of someone else's reality now becomes part of your own narrative, intertwining with your thoughts, awakening an undeniable curiosity, the insatiable hunger to know what lies beyond. What stories have yet to be told, what mysteries hover just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. So hold on to this feeling, this electric thread of wonder and unease. For it is what connects us all across the vast, unseen web of human experience. And if your heart races, if your mind lingers on the what-ifs and the maybes, then you know the story has done its work. Its magic has woven itself into the fabric of your being. So before you step away, remember this: every story you encounter here is a whispered invitation to look deeper, to listen harder, to embrace both the darkness and the light. If you found yourself lost, found yourself changed even slightly, then honor this connection by keeping the flame alive. Like this video if the story haunted you. Subscribe to join the fellowship of seekers who chase unseen truths. And ring the bell to be the first to greet the next confession, the next shadow, the next revelation waiting to rise from the depths, because here, we don't merely tell stories. We summon them. We become vessels for the forgotten, the hidden, and the unspoken. And you, dear listener, have become part of this sacred exchange. So until the next tale finds you in the quiet hours, keep your senses sharp, your heart open, and never stop chasing the whispers in the silence. Thanks for watching. Take care, and good luck. Perhaps today's story raised new questions or brought back old memories. On platforms like Reddit, new experiences are shared every day, creating fresh narratives that connect us all. Each person has a unique journey, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These moments remind us of our shared humanity, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, always learning. If this story resonated with you, feel free to share it. Your thoughts and feedback are invaluable, as they motivate us to create even better content. Our goal is to understand diverse perspectives and make our content relatable and enriching. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are equally valuable. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know. We strive to create content that brightens your mind and offers new ideas. Even if you've seen it before, your feedback helps us improve and bring fresh perspectives. Today's video was just a small part of the countless stories shared across the world, reminding us how we connect and learn through sharing our experiences. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all grow together. Thank you for your time. Keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more compelling content. Your support drives us forward, and we will continue to bring you thought-provoking and heartwarming narratives. Until next time, take care and stay curious.